Hello, everyone, and welcome back to our reading of The Swiss Family Robinson. Today's chapter, An Inland Journey. Let's get started. The greatest danger to which we had yet been exposed was now over, but there remained much anxiety in my mind lest another serpent might, unseen by us, have entered the swamp, or might appear, as this had done, from the country beyond Falconhurst. I projected then two excursions. The first to make a thorough examination of the thicket and morass, the next right away to the gap, through which alone the arch-enemy could have entered our territory. On summoning my sons to accompany me to the marsh, I found neither Ernest nor Jack very eager to do so, the latter vowing he had the cold shivers each time he thought how his ribs might have been smashed by the last flap of the snake's tail. But I did not yield to their reluctance, and we finally set about crossing the marsh by placing planks and wicker hurdles on the ground and changing their places as we advanced. Nothing was discovered beyond tracks in the reeds and the creature's lair, where the rushes, grass, and bog plants were beaten down. Emerging beyond the thicket, we found ourselves on firm ground, near the precipitous wall of rock, and perceived a clear, sparkling brook flowing from an opening which proved to be a cave or grotto of considerable size. The vaulted roof was covered with stalactites, while many formed stately pillars which seemed as though supporting the roof. The floor was strewn with fine, snow-white earth, with a smooth, soapy texture, which I felt convinced was Fuller's earth. Well, this is a pleasant discovery, said I. This is as good as soap for washing, and won't save me the trouble of turning soap boiler. Perceiving that the streamlet flowed from an opening of some width in the inner rock, Fritz passed through in order to trace it to its source, presently shouting to me that the opening widened very much and begging me to follow him. I did so, leaving the other boys in the outer cave, and fired a pistol shot, the reverberating echoes of which testified to the great extent of the place, and lighting the bit of candle I always carried with me, we advanced, the light burning clear and steadily, though shedding a very feeble light in so vast a space. Suddenly Fritz exclaimed, I very believe this is a second cave of salt. See how the walls glance, and how the light is reflected from the roof. These cannot be salt crystals, said I. The water which flows over them leaves no track, and tastes quite sweet. I am rather inclined to believe that we have penetrated into a cave of rock crystal. Oh, how splendid! Then we have discovered a great treasure. Certainly, if we could make any use of it, but in our situation it is about as valuable as the lump of gold found by good old Robinson Crusoe. Anyhow, I will break off a piece for a specimen. See, here is a fine bit, only rather dull and not transparent. What a pity! I must knock off another. You must go more carefully to work, or it will look as dull as the first. You destroyed its true form, which is that of a pyramid, with 6 sides or faces. We remained some time in this interesting grotto, but our light burnt low after we had examined it in different directions. Then Fritz, having secured a large lump which exhibited several crystals in perfection, we quitted the place, Fritz discharging a fair round shot for the sake of hearing the grand echoes. On reaching the open air, we saw poor Jack sobbing bitterly, but as soon as we appeared, he ran joyfully toward us and threw himself into my arms. My child, what is the matter? I cried anxiously. Oh, I thought you were lost. I heard a noise twice, as if the rocks had shattered down, and I thought you and Fritz were crushed in the ruins. It was horrible. How glad I am to see you. I comforted the child and explained the noises he had heard, inquiring why he was alone. Ernest is over there among the reeds. I dare say he did not hear the shots. I found Ernest busily engaged in weaving a basket in which to catch fish. He had devised it ingeniously with a funnel-shaped entrance, through which the fish would not easily find their way out, but would remain swimming about in the wide part of the apparatus. I shot a young serpent when you were away, father, said he. It lies there covered with rushes, and is nearly 4 feet long and as thick as my arm. A serpent? Cried I, hurrying toward it in alarm, and fearing there must be a brood of them in the swamp after all. A fine large eel, you mean, my boy. This will provide an excellent supper for us tonight. I am glad you had the courage to kill it instead of taking to your heels and fleeing from the supposed serpent. Well, I thought it would be so horrid to be pursued and caught that I preferred facing it. My shot took effect, but it was very difficult to kill the creature outright. It moved about although its head was smashed. The tenacity of life possessed by eons is very remarkable, I said. I have heard that the best mode of killing them is to grasp them by the neck and slap their tail smartly against a stone or post. We made our way back more easily by keeping close to the cliffs, where the ground was firmer, and found the mother washing clothes at the fountain. She rejoiced greatly at our safe return, and was much pleased with the supply of fuller's earth, as she said there was now very little soap left. The eon was cooked for supper, and during the evening a full account was given of our passage through the swamp and discovery of the rock crystal cavern. It was most important to ascertain whether any serpent lurked among the woods of our little territory beyond the cliffs and the sea. Preparations were set on foot for the second and greater undertaking of a search throughout the country beyond the river, as far as the gap. I wished all the family to go on the expedition, a decision which gave universal satisfaction. Intending to be engaged in this search for several weeks, we took the small tent and a store of all sorts of necessary provisions, as well as firearms, tools, cooking utensils, and torches. All these things were packed on the cart which was drawn by Storm and Grumble. Jack and Franz mounted them, and acted at once the part of riders and drivers. My wife sat comfortably in the cart. Fritz rode in advance while Ernest and I walked. We were protected on our flanks by the dogs and Fangs, the tame jackal. Directing our course toward woodlands, we saw many traces of the serpent's approach to Rockburg. In some places where the soil was loose, the trail, like a broad furrow, was very evident indeed. At Falconhurst, we made a halt, and were as usual welcomed by the poultry as well as by the sheep and goats. We then passed on to woodlands, where we arrived at nightfall. All was peaceful and in good order. There was no track of Labora in that direction, no signs of visits from mischievous apes. The little farm and its inhabitants looked most flourishing. Next day was passing and making a survey of the immediate neighborhood. We took with us Fawn and Bruno, Juno's children, and went slowly along the left bank of the lake, winding our way among reedy thickets, which frequently turned us aside a considerable distance from the water. All at once there was a great rustling in the thicket. Franz fired, and I heard his happy voice calling out, "I've hit him! I've hit him!" "What have you hit?" shouted I in return. "A wild pig," said he, "but bigger than Fritz's." "Aha! I see you remember the agouti. Perhaps it is not a hog at all, but one of our little pigs from the farm. What will the old sow say to you, Franz?" I soon joined my boy and found him in transports of joy over an animal certainly very much like a pig, although its snout was broad and blunt. It was covered with bristles, had no tail, and in color was a yellowish gray. Examining it carefully and noticing its webbed feet and curious teeth, I decided that it must be a capybara, a water-loving animal of South America, and Franz was overjoyed to find that he had shot a new creature, as he said. It was difficult to carry it home, but he very sensibly proposed that we should open and clean the carcass, which would make it lighter. And then, putting it in a game bag, he carried it till quite tired out. He then asked if I thought Bruno would let him strap it on his back. We found the dog willing to bear the burden, and reached Woodlands soon afterward. There we were surprised to see Ernest surrounded by a number of large rats, which lay dead on the ground. "Where can all these have come from?" exclaimed I. "Have you and your mother been rat hunting instead of gathering rice as you intended?" "We came upon these creatures quite unexpectedly," he replied. "While in the rice swamp, Nips, who was with us, sprang away to a kind of long-shaped mound among the reeds, and pounced upon something which tried to escape into a hole. He chattered and gnashed his teeth, and the creature hissed and squeaked, and running up I found he had got a big rat by the tail. He would not let go, and the rat could not turn in the narrow entrance to bite him, but I soon pulled it out and killed it with my stick." The mound was a curious-looking erection, so I broke it open with some difficulty, and doing this dislodged quite a dozen of the creatures. Some I killed, but many plunged into the water and escaped. On examining their dwelling, I found it a vaulted tunnel made of clay and mud and thickly lined with sedges, rushes, and water lily leaves. There were other mounds or lodges close by, and seeking an entrance to one, I stretched my game bag across it, and then hammered on the roof till a whole lot of rats sprang out, several right into the bag. I hit away right and left, but began to repent of my audacity when I found the whole community swarming about in the wildest excitement, some escaping, but many stopping in bewilderment, while others actually attacked me. Just as I began to shout for help, Juno came dashing through the reeds and water and made quick work with the enemy, all flying from her attack. My mother had great difficulty in forcing her way through the marsh to the scene of action, but reached me at last, and we collected all the slain to show you, and for the sake of their skins. This account excited my curiosity, and I went to examine the place Ernest described. I found to my surprise an arrangement much like a beaver dam, though on a small scale and less complete. You have discovered a colony of beaver rats, said I to Ernest, so called from their resemblance in scale and manner of life to that wonderful creature. After a hearty supper, everyone seeming wearied by the fatigues of the day, our mattresses and pillows were arranged, and the inmates of Woodlands betook themselves to repose. Beaver rats. I was almost suspecting them to be meerkats placed in the wrong habitat. Anyway, that would be all for today. I'll see you all next time. See ya!